So here we are off the grid with the CEO of the National Pro Grid League, Jim Kean.
Morning, everybody.
Glad to have you here today. We are actually in San Jose, California for the weekend. This is the season kickoff here. All the teams are here, all 8 teams.
Yep.
First 2 matches happened yesterday, and we're getting ready to start off second day. So we wanted to grab Jim and talk about a few things. I read an article on your website, a press release, announcing Claude Rubal.
Yep.
And what I thought was interesting is, as I read through the article, he has an interesting background and obviously a pretty cool dude if he works for Google and YouTube and that sort of stuff. But what caught my attention was one little line that talked about OTT, or otherwise known as original content, and really interested in hearing what you guys are planning on doing with that.
So OTT is this. So let's step back a minute. For the last 5 years, you've had broadcast TV numbers have been just falling off the table, and a lot of broadcast people are trying to figure out what the new model is because everything is getting blown up. And so WWE a couple years ago really caught everybody's attention because they started this subscription service for $9.99 a month. A couple million users. It became a big cash cow. And they developed
I might have checked out that site.
Yeah.
That's how I knew about it. That's pretty cool.
Did you buy a mask?
Not telling. It's a Captain America mask.
Nacho Libre.
Yeah.
But so that really caught everybody's eye. And then you start thinking, okay, so why couldn't we have our own network? And so Claude had the last 4 years of doing that for Google YouTube. When he went in there, Google YouTube did not have a single sports content deal with any major sport. When he left, he had them with all of them, A-level sports, B-level. He knows all those guys. And that came from his 7 years prior to that to starting Universal Sports, which was a big TV network that ultimately merged with NBC.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting about what Universal did was they took, from what I remember, they took all the Olympic sports, which are sports that have really hardcore fans, but not an outlet for those fans to watch it other than the Olympics.
Yeah.
And the sports keep going in between those 4 years, but there's nowhere to find it, right?
Right.
So they created a way for that content to be available to those fans, right?
Yeah, he pioneered a lot of the camera shots and just the production values, how all that went out to the users. He's really smart on, the little things, which to me, everybody always gets the big picture right on broadcast and creating events. But where you fall down about it being good versus great is the small stuff. So, for example, at Google YouTube, when he did the NFL, he actually put a camera in the tunnel where the players would line up waiting to go out in the field. And that turned out like he generates something like 1 million views a game just from that.
That's crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It is the little things.
Yeah.
It's behind-the-scenes things.
Yeah.
Well, and fans increasingly don't want to feel like it's a Wizard of Oz experience where you don't pay attention to what's going on behind the curtain. They actually don't care what goes on beyond the curtain. They actually want to.
They want to see the wizard pulling it.
They want to see how the machine works to
Yeah.
create the illusion in front. So to them, the more they can feel like insiders, the better. And I think OTT as a network and a platform can really be this, for us, a lifestyle brand where we have this format that is a wonderful machine for generating content. And we can generate content at the pro level. Our 2-hour match looks great on TV. It was designed for that. We could also use that format for, let's say we had our equivalent of Division I football or the SEC versus the NFL. Given the explosion of our amateur system, I really think if we had a network, all these amateur teams and leagues would have a venue to begin streaming their matches, and the level of play would go way up, and it would just drive the ecosystem. And again, broadcast TV is about large numbers. I think that OTT is about large numbers, but in very small buckets.
And concentrated numbers,
Yeah.
right? Highly concentrated as opposed to watered down numbers.
Right, and they're super dedicated fans. So if you had, let's say you had a consistent audience of 50,000 people watching the Southern Amateur Grid League, somebody might say that's not a big number, but you might say, well, yeah, but look how crazy those fans are.
Right. And how dedicated and how obsessed they are with the sport.
Right.
So for a guy like me who has to take off his shoes to do math, so I just want to break it down a little bit more or try to give everybody an idea what that actually means, like original content and having a channel. So it's like, so you would go, like if you had Verizon or Comcast or whatever, you would actually have a channel on your guide that said, Grid Channel or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever,
Grid Channel.
Yeah.
We'd go do deals with people like Hulu. Netflix is really looking for a content in functional fitness, so their possibility. You could be listed on the Roku lineup. Roku is an amazing platform by itself. I mean, they have 15 million installed devices.
Right.
And what's interesting about a Roku device, once it gets activated, it never dies. If somebody buys an advanced Roku device like Roku 2, they actually never throw it away. They just give it to a friend. So, you look at a Roku household, 15 million active devices since inception, and most of them are still running.
Yeah.
Unless some guy dips it in water or something.
Right.
Or beer.
Some guy like me pours
that's our
beer.
problem.
I'm sure that never happens, right? Yeah.
Never poured a beer in my Xbox.
Yeah, exactly. I heard it doesn't work well after that.
It's a great way to end up with the new Xbox.
But you look at Roku just from that perspective, and then you kind of multiply that by 2. That's pretty much 30 million eyeballs that are going to the Roku, tab there.
Right. So just that alone.
Right.
And then you mix up, all the different. So that's what I was kind of going with. That is so for our average, our listeners are much smarter than I am. But for the folks that might not kind of grasp, it's not like a YouTube channel per se.
Right.
It's an actual real channel that you can get in multiple different platforms.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube has catalyzed this whole market, but really YouTube's not great for organizing a channel that looks like a channel like an NBC or something like that. Right. Their back-end tools are a little bit clunky to work with. Yeah. They don't give you a lot of ability to manage programming your channels or anything like that.
Yeah. No, it's difficult to get to see exactly what you want and kind of filter through and find. And it's, so it's going to be.
You ever done the YouTube channel on Roku?
I haven't.
I have not.
Oh, it's brutal. I mean, literally, for some reason, they're running a different version of YouTube on Roku. So when you try to do search or go into like the NPGL channel, it shows like matches from last season, but kind of weird orders, and you can't fast forward very well.
It kind of happens to me on regular YouTube.
Yeah, me too.
When I'm searching for NPGL.
Think of it as a non-optimized YouTube, if you can imagine that.
Even clunkier.
Yes.
So let's talk timelines. When do you think this would be reality?
Well, I'm always kind of trying to bite off more than we chew, because I want to make sure it's always a consistently good product versus always trying new things. And so I think this year and last year have been a series of experiments where we say, okay, we're going to roll this out, run it a little bit, see how it works. If the numbers look good on that, we'll expand it. So this year we're going to do the Grid Invitational. And that's to actually recognize I think, incredible progress the amateur leagues have made since last year.
So before we get into the Grid Invitational, I wanted to back up again and ask about an amateur league. There might be some out there that have a question about, because you mentioned it, about the using the – so where would all this content come from if you only have 8 teams? But the amateur leagues are going to have
so if you look at it, the one thing is people think that you have to have like this, what I call Tier A content that is good enough to be on NBC. But really, people actually like, in a way, watching the kind of downscale a bit. Right?
Regional sports networks are huge.
Well, like us.
Right. Or us. Right.
Yeah, we get 68 countries, right?
Right. 95 now.
95 now.
95 countries.
And the cost would be prohibitive if you're just doing A signature events all the time. So you need to have this mix of what I call A, B, and C levels of user experience and content. And so to me, the amateur leagues is some of the top-notch ones like the SAGL have really good play. I mean, obviously, because 14 of them that played in the SAGL last year are now in the league, right?
They end up exactly. So do you see these amateur leagues on their own kind of producing the content and then pushing it to you guys? Or how does that work, like logistically?
So I don't know if they have the capability of putting it to at least the minimal level right now from a TV perspective where it'd look good. And also you need to have the sports graphics packages.
That's the hard part.
Because you want to have the, functional fitness as a sport doesn't exist unless you can count it real time, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, just 2 people working out and you're trying to guess who's ahead.
So as media guys, we kind of know that you have to have the graphic stuff. And that, if you guys notice, we don't have that when we do our videos because it is very difficult and it's very cost prohibitive.
It's our software platform has spent $2 million, and most of that is just being able to collect the results real time off of the grid and then convert it to the proper TV graphic for NBC or Fox or anybody else that has a dominant TV box. And so all that work we've done, we actually feel we can provide as a platform to any amateur league that comes along. And they're usually pretty happy that they can focus on creating a great product.
They don't want to be media
yeah,
folks.
And if we provide the channel and provide the tools, the scoring systems, you start to see the rise of these grid facilities where you can come in and literally you could even have 200 people attending a match. If it's well curtain lit, it can look like 10,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Yeah, and the energy is projected right. It doesn't matter if there's only 200 people.
Right.
It's still there's still fans and there's a crowd and it's loud and there's music and it's the whole same feeling.
well, you know, one of my all-time favorite shows, Friday Night Lights.
Oh, right.
Yeah, 60 episodes, just the drama of Texas high school football.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And they built a show where, even though it's a sports show, the actual kind of watching the high school team play usually was about 3 minutes of drama through the whole show, and it was all the backstory around that. I really think we can do a functional fitness Friday Night Lights. There's plenty of material.
There's we've already learned. I mean, there's just so many stories out there, and that's actually what most fans want to hear about. They want to watch the matches, obviously.
Yeah.
But they want to know what happens before and after the matches.
Right.
And what happens when these folks are training, what their lives are like. It's interesting, right?
Yeah, and just given, not to be trashy, but, we have men and women on teams and competing close together, cooperating and all that. So I think it's a matter of time before we have a Jerry Springer in his team.
Oh,
too.
sure. Absolutely.
Well, we're definitely going to have some love interests, and that's going to be cool.
And some messy breakups. And
Yeah. Everybody's waiting for Danny and I to break up. It's never going to happen.
No, I love him too much. It's true.
All right. Well, we want to transition and to talk about the Grid Invitational. But before we do that, we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the event that's going to be happening at the end of the year at Championship Week. We'll be right back.
We love to lift, laugh, and improve. This is Björk, Odin's daughter.
So we're back with Jim Kean, and we are going to talk a little bit about the Grid Invitational coming up and how it tied into the OTT programming. So the Grid Invitational, that's starting in what time frame again?
So we're going to do a pilot tournament around what we call Championship Week. And so backing up a bit, we have decided that every year we're going to have Championship Week, and that's going to be our playoff series of quarters, semis, and finals. And so what's composed of Championship Week? So you have the playoffs, of course.
Right.
But we want to make sure the athletes have plenty of rest. So between the quarters and the semis and the finals, there'll be 3 or 4 days between. And so we've got a great deal with the city of Anaheim in their bowl, which is perfect. They had the 1980 wrestling there for the Olympics.
Right.
And it's about 2,500 seats, lower bowl, dark seats, so the lighting's great. It's right across the street from Disneyland. So City of Anaheim's really trying to recruit sports teams because they've lost a lot recently. And so they gave us a great deal. We can have this rig set up. So I was thinking about it. I said, we got a full-on professional rig set up. All the cameras are there, everything like that. So we can actually give people a taste of professional grid. We'll have our referees, just everything about being a pro. And so our amateurs, the very best ones, have just an astounding level of play. I mean, witness 14 of the SAGL are in the league. Right, so I really want to promote our system to where we have consistent play. We allow athletes, if they make a career decision, that they start maybe they're in rec leagues, and then they end up in a good amateur system, and then they get recognized and get moved up. So how do you have that happen? And so one of the things that really highlights athletes going into the pros is the bowl season in football.
Yep.
And the NCAA March Madness. So I thought, what if we had our own Grid Madness? Right, and we have this rig set up.
I like the name, Grid Madness.
Yeah, Grid Madness. And so I thought, we have this set up, and we'll put up at least a $50,000 prize, and whoever wants to come compete can do that. We'll film them. We'll have TV production on that. They'll get the referees, all the NPGL referees, just that whole experience. And so we'll have the opportunity to train and just be treated like a pro athlete. And at the same time, if they're there, they'll in the evening get to watch the pros playoff, and those are all going to be televised as well. It's right across the street from Disneyland. And that time of year, everybody's in school, so hotels are fairly cheap. There's a ton of them because Disneyland's there. And we're going to go out and line up a lot of deals for that to get bulk rooms and whatnot. And then LA has the best travel market in the United States because there's a lot of airlines go in there.
Right.
There's at least 5 different airports.
The tickets are a lot cheaper to get out there, especially that time of year. So how many teams is it again?
Right now we're doing 16.
16. So and it's probably going to go no matter how many teams. Well, that 16 will be the max.
Yeah, 16's the max.
Okay. And we're actually going to announce on our episode that Team Gridcast is going to throw their hat in there. If you guys catch that on the regular episode when it comes out.
From Honey Badger, USA.
From Honey Badger.
Honey Badger, Virginia.
But so we're excited about it because it sounds like a great opportunity.
Well, and then the other thing to complete championship weekend, I'll tell you why this is an experiment, because everything I do is an A/B test, right? So the championship week has the pros, Grid Invitational, and there's a lot for both sides to like there, a lot to do. So there's a lot of value to go there, right? And then lastly, we're going to have wrapped around a party that's kind of like a combination of South by Southwest meets functional fitness. And we're going to have there's gigantic, iconic palm trees right outside this convention center, and they're going to let us pull up food trucks. We'll have bands, big video wall.
Beer?
Beer. We're actually going to...
You had Danny at beer.
We're going to put together a curated kind of functional fitness atmosphere outside, so you'll be able to watch it, drink beer. We have something called the Recovery Bar. So there would be zero gravity loungers with NormaCheck. There would be an open air gym that we're working with Illeco to design.
Oh, sweet.
And so you're going to be able to show up, buy equipment at substantial discounts, test out things in the recovery bar, all the way from true recovery drinks to more fun recovery drinks like tequila, right? And while you're doing that, you can watch stuff on the Jumbotron outside. We'll have seminars. There's a whole range of different things to be doing.
So it's a big party. It's you could make a vacation out of it.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
and then across the street from Disneyland, bring the kids, cheap hotel rooms, and so you can pack a lot in there. I mean, how often can you wrap Disneyland up with functional fitness?
Only with Grid.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I'm going to try to keep Conan back from going into Disneyland because what he likes to do is dress up as Jasmine and just take pictures with people, and it gets kind of awkward sometimes.
Well, as long as he can roll a barbell,
he doesn't shave off the beard. So everyone's like, wait a minute, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a good disguise.
No.
Most people don't know that Jasmine does have facial hair. She shaves it all the time.
Not a classic beauty, but there are many forms of beauty in the world.
That's right. You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah. At the Invitational, I remember us talking last time we talked about it because we did an Off the Grid episode about it, and we wanted to have an update. One of the things we're looking at maybe having some of the military services involved too, right?
Yeah. So not this year.
Okay, not this year.
Right, but we're looking at doing a military tournament in October between the 4 branches.
Oh, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, so we're not quite there yet, but we're definitely working on that. There's a lot of interest on both sides. Now, what all this sets is, because I talked about tests and whatnot, so what this sets us up to, and goes back to our earlier discussion about OTT, is I can see the back half of every year being the pro system running its course, as well as all the great amateur systems out there as well. And then just like college football, end of the year, what do you have? The bowls.
Well, you get the bowls, right?
Yeah, and now the bowl playoff. So we could see the first half of next year, we'll have regionals, roughly where the teams are, plus maybe one in Australia and Europe, where you have an all-comers tournament, so then the cost is low. There would be prizes enough to maybe fund the travel to go to then a Sweet 16 Final Four, and we'll rotate that around the U.S., just like the NCAA does.
Yeah, something we thought that was really exciting looking at the gridinvitational.com right now, that there is a team from Ireland, there's a team from Australia, and a team from Hungary all interested in coming and competing.
Yeah, no, there's rumors that the Celtic Fire are really just San Francisco trained.
You know what?
Alan's got a big...
and he's basically poking at the Gridcast team already.
Oh, he's already called us out. The gauntlet's been thrown.
Well, the trash talking is profound between them and the Texas Bloodhounds.
Let's talk about how fans can... it can benefit fans to actually be a part of this and be a part of a team.
Yeah, so part of the winnings go to so whatever team recruits the most fans, and that's part of the voting process. But also as part of if your team wins, then the number one booster, there's a split of the first for the first 10 fans. Of some sort. And Sean can talk about more of that later. But we're really trying to make it a kind of a community event.
That's awesome.
So let's back up a little bit, because you talked about how last half of the year, kind of the pro system is in full swing. First half of the year, so even though this year the Invitational is in the fall, obviously, as we progress, we probably would be looking at it more like in the spring.
Yeah.
So you'd go. So their season the amateur league season would kind of mirror the pro season, but then continue on.
Yeah,
and
so they'll have the capstone event is, for example, all the leagues that we decide are good leagues that are at least following some form of grid and have
we
good
say
level
good
play.
leagues. They're playing grid.
They're playing
right?
grid.
They're not doing some other kind of functional fitness.
And calling it grid.
Yeah.
There's no rowers, treadmills.
AMRAPs.
No AMRAPs and grid.
Yeah, things are for time. They're races.
Right.
Yeah. So because the end of the season, you go to bowls because you've just run in football 10, 11, 12 games and really demonstrate you're a great team by the end of the season. You want to see the great teams going at it, right? Mm-hmm. And so we would foresee a system evolving eventually where maybe you have 2 or 3 of the top teams in every top conference get bowl bids, right? Mm-hmm. Or bids to the tourney, just like NCAA,
sure.
right? And then maybe you have a couple standing things, like maybe the team that won the year before gets an invitation to the next year's Grid Invitational if they want, just kind of standing. Mm-hmm. Maybe the 4 service branches always have a standing slot as far as a regional. So there's a lot we can do with that.
Sounds great.
So let's move from anything else we want to talk about with the Grid Invitational?
No, it's.
So we're going to talk to Sean.
It's a test for setting up a year-long run of amateur, Senior Bowl-like things for all-star amateurs, training camps, drafts, pro season, regular season for amateurs. That's the schedule.
And I think the exciting thing for folks that are really looking at the amateur league level and even rec level, meaning you're coming from the rec level up to the amateur league level, is just figuring out what the seasons are. Because that's the hardest part is like,
absolutely.
Okay, when are we playing, right? And if everybody can just kind of get on board and say, okay, it might not be when I thought I was going to do my season, but let's all kind of get on board and make the flow the same. First of all, you're going to get a lot more media coverage, concentrated.
You are.
There's a lot of reasons why you want an agreed-upon season. And I think you guys are kind of just from the top down are just kind of letting that evolve and happen, and giving it a little.
Well, we want to
boost.
catalyze the community because you hit it right. Is if you have, it can't be unknown or just random all the time.
Because folks are guessing right now.
Yeah, because a lot of times, like if you want to start lining up sponsorships in pro sports, it happens a year and a half before, and so they have to have certainty. You have to have calendars. You have to know when the seasons are, and then you can begin designing long-running tactical and strategic marketing programs around that. People can plan their lives around it. It just provides, and humans are seasonal people, right? There's always a winter, spring, summer, fall.
And for the athletes, you need to know when to train. When can I fit this in? If I'm doing something else, if I work, if I have a life, when can my training cycle begin?
And also, you like to kind of know how you're moving up the leaderboard, right?
Sure.
I mean, life is a leaderboard. All right, I just finished high school. I get to go to college.
Right.
I just got out of varsity football in high school. I'm going to college.
Not everyone can be 17 and drafted by the Boston Iron.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, phenomenal, right?
Right.
So having that system and whatnot is just so essential because then people, once the system's in place and the structure's in place, the whole ecosystem can actually start to function. And it means more money comes in, more people get paid, people can make a living, everybody, not just the athletes and coaches, but the managers, the companies that supply that, the trainers, the scouts. It causes the whole ecosystem to start kicking off.
It goes back to one of our first episodes that sports is a business, whether you like it or not.
It is.
It is, and it has to be self-sufficient. I mean, it can't, it has to be able to survive, so it has to be a good business,
right.
not just a business. Well, that's exciting stuff. The big thing that's going on this weekend, though, is the kickoff of the season. So we finished out yesterday with 2 matches, and so from outsiders or quasi-outsider point of view, Danny Tyler and I were at the match, of course, or at the matches all day, and it seemed the energy, the crowd, the level of participation from the crowd, it was very different from last year and very clean. So that's our perspective.
You know, is it possible to make something more polished but yet seem more with the people at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what it felt like.
So that's our perspective. What's the internal perspective?
So we started out kind of big picture. We got, I thought, 80% right last year from a television media user experience.
Yep.
And then we sat down off season and got really picky about things. So one thing is last year we had kind of a hurry-up deal with an apparel sponsor. This year we actually had a really good run-up with Hiley, who, you know, kudos to those guys. They're great partners. I mean, they work really hard.
Those uniforms are phenomenal.
They're
not just the way they look, but we've seen them. Those are great.
Well, and it's their 4-ply. The fabric is fantastic, and the colors, and just I didn't know how apparel worked for sports teams, but literally it's all a supply chain that goes all the way back to China, and sometimes colors don't take right, and so you have to do a whole bunch of batch testing and whatnot. I didn't realize. I mean, they had to pull out the stops. We signed the deal in February, March timeframe. It was almost not enough time, and
Right.
actually we're going to begin planning for next season in July to be able to get proper testing.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, because we're going to take what we learned on these uniforms this year, and we see tons of places we can improve, even though we think they're fantastic.
You know, our logo would look fantastic on
Yeah.
the side of a uniform. Like
Well,
for the, just saying.
I've been actively thinking about a Gridcast tattoo right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't see why not. It's a perfect
Like
place.
an Indian worry spot, you know?
But if you go on Bloomberg, they're going to have to put a whole lot of makeup there.
Oh, yeah, it'd be profound.
If you guys have ever noticed, Coach Kotler has his right on the his forearm.
Yeah, it's ours. It's so nice. It's so nice that he
Nice
has
of
one
him.
right there.
He has a badass microphone tattoo, and we kid him.
But, yeah, it was the little things that so, for example, uniformity, right, is what you want for a brand. And so we went through and really paid attention to that. The banners behind the start lines, we mandated, like, you couldn't have all your, like, I hate to say it about our athletes, but they're profoundly messy creatures.
Right. Well, athletes are. I mean, right? They're not
So they
always tidy.
walk through life exercising, leaving a tornado-like trail of destruction. And so we said, all right, you need to keep your stuff picked up around the benches and places to put things away. It just has to look nice on TV.
Yep.
We have higher standards for even cleaning the grid and getting all, just even a slightly speck of dust off that. If you go look at the grid itself, the rig, it's actually matte this year. Last year was stainless steel.
Yeah.
So if one fingerprint got on it, you couldn't quite see it, but it just looked kind of smudgy and not quite as crisp.
Yeah.
So it's just all the little tiny things that you cognitively can't
The
quite put
flooring
your
is
finger
that
on
way
it.
too, right? It's
Yeah.
more matte.
Yeah,
finish
yeah,
than it was.
and change the color slightly so it's more kind of contrast.
Yeah. I mean, visually this year, just walking out there, everything is like intense.
Even
And
the
it-
referee hand signals are more sharp.
Right.
Absolutely. And at this convention center, the grid area is a magnet for everyone. Everyone comes over to the grid
they
area.
Just come hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the lights, the lighting we spent
Oh.
extra time on, and literally have something walking almost every single foot.
Checking all the
before-
lighting.
Yeah, with the light meter. The graphics package got improved a bit. So it was nothing profound. It was all just 1,000 little things.
And now you have examples of last year's matches that you can put up on the big screen to kind of explain to the crowd, and here's how grid works.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you have those little packages between every race.
Yeah, and then we had time this time around. We literally have a picture of every single athlete that was done to our standards, so we don't have some guy selfieing himself as his profile
Yeah,
picture.
yes.
Yeah.
It is a league professional photographer. We had a makeup artist, all that, and the athletes loved it. I mean, they're so good about pushing their pictures, and some of those pictures were just phenomenal. You stare at them and say, "We have amazing human beings in our
Yep.
league."
Yeah, we saw Aaron's pose. That was nice.
Aaron looked pretty darn good.
He
you know?
did. He looked very studly.
He did. Looked like he was laughing at someone off camera. But he looked really good.
Well, we're going to wrap this thing up and go watch the matches because they're coming up here really quick, and we know Jim's got to be front and center for them, and we do too. So we appreciate you taking time out of your day.
As always,
And,
I'm your biggest fan. So.
We're
appreciate
Grid's
it.
biggest fans, and
Yeah.
we're trying to get all the information for all the fans out there. So we will have our episode coming out this next week, and we'll have a lot to talk about with all these matches. Danny's going to do match-by-match analysis. So far,
I'm already filling up my little book.
he's 2-0.
2-0 so far.
Gridmaster's 2-0, but that's okay. It's still early.
Well,
I like your little matrix. Did you know there's this thing called Excel?
you know what? I
I
can't.
also try to get him to use Evernote, and that's his Evernote right there.
This is my travel Excel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it works really well this way.
All right, guys.
All right.
Till next
All right,
time.
Thanks.
Clean up your jerks and snatches, drink your beer in batches, and always dominate your grid matches. See you guys.
See you.
Bye-bye.